the CPA exam is changing. And I think that this, anytime it happens, causes a lot of fear. And there's really not a lot of information to dispel some of those fears, which is why I wanted to record this little audio, talk through some of the things that I've been hearing from people who've been sending me direct messages across my social media, and just give you a little bit of a deep breath. This is going to be okay. And just remember, on the CPA exam, failure is not failure. It's just another practice test. Please don't get down on yourself if you do not get over a 75. Again, it's just a practice test. In that case, it was a little bit more expensive than you were expecting, but it really doesn't impact you long term. And no one's going to ask you what your scores were. I promise. It's not like grad school. Okay, the topic of today is goodbye BEC. What is happening with this new exam format? And what do I need to know as this transition actually starts to happen? The first thing that I want to say about the BEC section going away is, if you are trying to pass it before the deadline and for some reason that does not happen, it's not all is lost. Please don't add undue stress upon yourself to get this passed before the deadline. If it doesn't happen and you really wanted it to, it doesn't mean you're not going to be a CPA. It doesn't mean you're going to have to learn a ton of information that's brand new. No, it's just a different set of blueprints you're going to need to study now, and maybe it's something that you're more interested in anyway. So try not to get too down on yourself. Okay, with that said, a lot of review course providers are going to be pushing that you try to take BEC if you're currently testing before the exam change. There's a lot of reasons for this, one of which is to sell courses, but also because their review course information for BEC is so much more robust than it is for the new sections. They're still actively working on those. The new blueprints were released very recently, and so the courses themselves are just more confident in their review course products for BEC than they are about the new tests. That said, I don't think it's that imperative if you are currently studying for the CPA exam to take the old BEC. BEC actually is challenging for quite a few people, especially if it's been a long time since you took econ. That can hang people up. It also, the other area that tends to hang people up is in cost accounting. Variances tends to trip people up. There's a couple areas that are just notoriously confusing and hard. And the other thing that's going to be different is if you are not a native English speaker, the written communication section will be going away. So sometimes that's helpful if you're not that confident in your written communication skills, to have that section not be something that you're going to need to worry about. The time compression on that and the stress of having to type something up can be sometimes challenging on some sort of proctored test. I know that gives me a little bit of stress, especially since it's usually at the end of these tests after you're already mentally spent. So, some things to consider as this comes about. One of the other reasons that review course providers are trying to push this and to encourage you to take BEC as soon as possible is that as these new sections roll out in 2024, the tests take a while for them to calibrate what the cut score should be. There is a lot of math that is involved in the back end on which scores will get a passing grade and which ones will not. And it's not a very easy to communicate process on how they grade the CPA exam. But I will say that the BEC section will take a little while for them to figure out how to score it. And as a result, the score release is longer. And having been someone who went through the CP exam when there was a delayed score release, it's brutal. It's very hard emotionally to wait for a score, especially if you take the score in the beginning of January and your release date is much later, sometime in March. So that can impact other things such as when you get formally licensed. If you are somebody who is waiting on a bonus, for example, at work, I know a lot of the big four still offer those types of bonuses. You have to wait for that passing score. So if you're in that situation, those bonuses, once they pay out, there's some sort of work requirement typically that you'd need to be working at that job for X amount of months or X amount of years. That can impact how long you need to stay at some of these organizations. And depending on your situation, that might not be something you're interested in doing. So just know that going into it, that can be another area that a lot of people don't consider when they are choosing, okay, should I do this now or should I wait? How should I do the strategy for this CPA exam going forward? But in terms of content, I am really, really excited about the new exam. They've really taken the time to do a practice analysis to determine what should be on it, what should not be on it. They've trimmed out a lot of the stuff that really isn't that relevant for someone who is 1 to 2 years of experience in the accounting profession, and either put some of that higher level, higher complexity stuff on the discipline sections, or they've just taken it off completely and said, hey, this is really something that as a firm, the firm is going to train somebody in. It's not something that needs to be just general knowledge for someone coming out of school, um, which is great. The misconception about BEC is that the BEC section is completely poof magically disappearing. That's not true at all. The BEC section is getting distilled into other sections and parts. There are large chunks of it that are just relocating. For example, the financial ratios are currently on BEC. Those are not obviously going to just not be on the CPA exam. They're just moving to FAR. That's one of the reasons why, if you weren't to pass BEC sometime this fall and you need to take it as a discipline, you need to switch over from BEC to a discipline, you just couldn't make it happen. That is okay, because a lot of the sections that were on BEC are going into other parts. So that knowledge is not completely lost. I am someone who is very interested in the IT, and I did information systems control testing when I was an auditor at one of the big four firms. That section is very exciting to me. It's very high level, it's very broad, lots of really new information. It doesn't have as many of the task-based simulations. They have a little bit heavier weighting on multiple choice because it is such a broad section, a little bit more remembering and understanding because it's so fast-moving. That section I think is really cool, and that would be the one that I would select if I were taking the CPA exam right now. But the other two sections, if you are going to be focusing on financial reporting, the new section, business analysis and reporting, is great. Tax compliance and planning is the other one. That one will be great for those of you who are focused on tax and really digging into what it looks like to build out a really robust tax plan for clients. And it's a really specialized skill set that maybe not everybody needs to know if they're not going to be going into tax. All right. That is the high level of what to know about BEC, what's changing, what are my thoughts on what you should do when, some things to consider. If you have other questions, I can be found on all the social media platforms. It's megan.cpa. I'm on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. Please send me a message with your questions and concerns. I am very happy to talk through them. And I think that this is so important. Have a wonderful day.